Since it is International Women's Day, and I hope you are all having an absolutely wonderful day if that applies to you, but just to tie into the theme, and also because I really did want to get a video done today, I thought I would do another quick little top 5 list. This time, 5 of my absolute favourite female models from the GW range. Now, just to clarify, this is just going to be models that I think are really cool and look awesome and that I like. It is not going to have any bearing on rules or how good they are in the game or anything like that. And it is also going to cross between games, so it is going to be 40k, AOS, maybe even some Warhammer Fantasy. It is going to be all of the GW systems. I really felt like having a browse through the Warhammer catalogue and collection and picking out 5 of the models that I am a really big fan of. So let's avoid any nasty comments about who likes what and whatever, and dive right in. Oh, and also this is female models and female characters that have models. If I was doing this from the perspective of lore or backstory, then obviously Lotara Sarin would be the #1 spot because she is an absolute badass. But alas, she doesn't have a model. She should, 100%, but she doesn't yet. In the #5 spot, we move straight onto 40k, and not always female lore-wise, but certainly model-wise it's female. We have the Kidus Assassin. This was actually one of the very first models I ever picked up, although the very old metal version, not the new plastic version. I think it was £4 when I bought it, just to give you a rough idea, considering it is £21 at the moment. But I have always loved the Kidus Assassin, and in particular this newly designed plastic version. It is a bit spindly and fiddly and prone to snapping on the legs, but I just love the dynamism in it. I love the way she's leaping down, her hair flowing behind her, just ready to slam her phase sword into the enemy. It's such a cool model with so much movement in it. Like, the old metal models were also cool, I have to say, but this update just took it to a whole new level. I love the pose of it. I love also how the body glove that she's wearing also gives painters a chance to do some polymorphine effects with her camo, like merging into the rock face. I've seen some really good paint jobs with that kind of look to it. It is just, all in all, a super cool, super interesting, and really eye-catching model to add to your army, and it really does stand out as being this, not centerpiece because it's not huge, but just something a bit different, you know, in an army of Space Marines or Astra Militarum or even Custodes. It's just something unique and new and different, and it's a really cool model to have on the battlefield. Up next, we move to a slightly more outlandish, but maybe not quite as much as some of the other models in this list, unit in the Genestealer Cult Mages. This model is really simple, and it is. I mean, it's basically just the Magus walking forward, staff held down, and a dagger in her hand. But I absolutely love the simplicity of it. I think it's so striking, especially in an army filled with these half Genestealer forms and abominants and all this other nightmarish horror. She just looks so normal, and to me that adds like a layer of fear all by itself. I think the model is just incredibly well detailed, which I'm also a huge fan of. I love how, although she does look normal, you could very easily paint her up to look a lot more alien with some paler, perhaps more bluish purple skin. Those crest folds on her head and her slightly enlarged cranium would definitely let you play into that Genestealer vibe a lot more. Her robe and her bodice corset thing, they're absolutely gorgeous. She just looks genuinely so regal and human and normal, and yet so menacing at the same time. I think they've done a really good job with building this uneasy presence into the mini. I'm also just a really big fan of her dagger. Anyone that holds a blade like backwards like that is just a win in my book. I absolutely love when people do that in films or games or whatever it is, just holding like a dagger or a sword backwards, like with the blade kind of pointing up your arm. It's just immediately cool to me. So that is a really, really cool part of the model that I like. It just adds to this effect that she is just casually walking towards her foe, mesmerizing them with her power, and then she's just going to casually walk up to them and then slice them across their neck and kill them without them like even realizing what's happening. It's just got so much potential story to it, but in such a simplistic design and simplistic form. And for me, that kind of stuff really does appeal a lot. From the more Xenos Genestealers, we move over to Age of Sigmar, and in particular to one of the most powerful vampires in the setting, and of course, Neferata had to make an appearance in this list. Admittedly, she does have a slight advantage because she is sat on the stunning mount, which is Nagadron, her Dread Abyssal, but even despite that extra bonus, this model and Neferata herself are just an absolute beauty. I love the whole model that she has. I've loved it since it first got released back in the end times, and I've owned it since it first got released back in the end times. I just love everything about it. Of all of the 3 Mortarks you could make from this kit, hers was the very first one I did, just because I think it's unbelievably cool. I love the design of her weapons, her dagger and her staff, Aken Seth. I love how she is like contemptuously sitting sidelong on her mount. She's like a Bretonnian princess on like a unicorn, but she's just on this massive Dread Abyssal instead. It's almost as if she is just relaxing, enjoying a pleasure ride on her mount, but she's just going to easily chop you to pieces as she flies past incredibly casually. I just think the whole dynamic story of her pose and the way she's sitting is just so cool. It just really does lend itself to this vampire queen that thinks and knows she's better than anyone else around her. Even her armor and her helmets, and despite not always being a huge fan of the big hats like Papa Nagash, hers is really appealing to me. It just exudes this aura of majesty and grandeur, which she very much has in her backstory and her lore. I would absolutely love to have a foot version of her just so we could see sort of her character and her model in sort of its own unique setting rather than being so conglomerated with her mount. I think it would be stunning, but even on her Dread Abyssal, it's just such a great design. I really like the fact that unlike her fellow Mortark Manfred, she even has this more unique, grandiose throne that she's sitting on as she rides into the battle, and then her flowing crimson cloak down the side just brings the whole model together. It's such a vampiric look and such a vampiric package. It is sleek, it's cool, it's menacing, it's sexy, and she does just absolutely 100% look like she's going to kill you, and barely even notice as she does it because you are just so beneath her. And for me, that is encapsulated almost perfectly in the model, and I absolutely love it for that. Sticking with Age of Sigmar for the 4th spot, we move from death to the realms of chaos, and in particular the realm of Khorne. And yes, you guessed it, Valkia the Bloody, possibly the oldest model in this list, in fact I would say definitely the oldest model in this list, is in the 4th spot. She is still resin, but despite that, she is still an unbelievably awesome and terrifying model. Now yes, she certainly could do with a new updated model to go along with the rest of the AOS range, but I do think that her current one still fits the bill for this bloodthirsty, slaughter-mad queen of the blood god incredibly well. She has still got some of the coolest wing designs in all of Warhammer. Her armor, her shield, even her face, which a lot of older models like struggle with, actually hold up really quite well to this day. She really does, just in general, have one of the most impressive sculpts despite the age of her model. And I would say even her spear, which I would argue is one of her weakest parts, still has this amazing bit of story in it as she is, leaping up from the ground, flames bursting from her cloven feet and her arm raised up like she's about to throw a javelin. Except, of course, the javelin is this massive spear called Sleipnir, which is aimed right at your face, and her own screaming cries in her face of unadulterated anger and rage and bloodlust, they are so clear and visible on her model. It's just a fantastic kit for the storytelling it gives when you put it together. And as I said, it does still just hold up so well. I really can't wait until she does get her well-deserved update, but for now it is still just one of my favourite models in the entire Warhammer range. Finally, we get to the number 1 spot, and I wanted to go with something like a Keeper of Secrets or Shalaxi Hellbane, because I love those models, but I couldn't because they're a they. They're not a she, so this isn't gonna fit into this top 5 female characters. There were also another few very strong considerations. Alarielle on her giant beetle is just an amazing model. Lady Alinda is one of my favourite models and one of my favourite Mortarchs. And even going to the old world, the new damsel on Unicorn, Lady Elise Ducard, is just a fantastic, gorgeous looking model. But none of them quite made the spot. Instead, we are travelling back to 40k, to the Loyalist side of things, and to what is just one of the most divine and awe-inspiring models we've seen in recent years, and that is of course Celestine the Living Saint. Now maybe it's just because I'm a sucker for anything with wings, and especially big angelic wings. Like, there's a reason Sanguinius is one of my favourite characters, but I just can't get enough of this model. The wings are just breathtaking to me. I absolutely love them. Whenever I see this model, I just get these feelings of, service to the Emperor, the holy light of terror, the righteousness of the Sisters of the Battle. It is just a truly epic model. Celestine is this winged, holy, literally avenging angel of the Imperium, and the model sells that so well. I really adore how her cloak is billowing out behind her, the scrolls being used on the model to give her this impression of flight, even the birds flying alongside her on her wings. It is just every inch this holy imagery that you would expect from a living saint. It's got a actually fairly simple design on Celestine herself, which again I really like because it ties into the idea of self-sacrifice and shunning the mortal temptations that Sisters of Battle have as their sort of core ideology, but it still manages to bring, as in a complete kit, this utterly stunning centerpiece model for your army that just screams, divine judgment and retribution and holy wrath. It is almost in some ways the antithesis of Valkia the Bloody that we had before, and I almost love it for that exact reason. She is like this this demon, or this greater demon of the Emperor, and I just love that whole idea of the Emperor having his own demons and like embodied forms of his will and the worship of him, and she just embodies that kind of idea almost perfectly. So that is my list. That is 5 of my absolute favourite female characters and models in the Warhammer setting. There are, of course, plenty more to pick from all of the game systems and beyond that in the lore, the backstory, the books and everything else. But for me, this is just 5 that I absolutely love to see or play with on the tabletop and just enjoy sort of having on the battlefield or just looking at, because I think their models and designs just encapsulate exactly what GW were going for, and they just look so interesting and fun and cool to see on the battlefield for whatever reason. But as always, I'd really love to know your list. What are some of your favourite female models and characters in the GW range? It can be from the old world, from Warhammer Fantasy, from AOS, from 40k, from Underworlds, from Necromunda. I don't care what it is, just give me your top picks of your favourite female characters and female models that Games Workshop have produced. And as always, thank you very much for watching. Please do like and subscribe for more Warhammer content from me. But until next time, I'll catch you later, guys.